you about the Lake Worth Monster, history of the mystery. He's the founder of Texas Bigfoot Research Center in Mundo. When he was a child, he was interested in strange and unusual subjects. When he was 9 years old, he heard about the Lake Worth Monster from the front page of the Star-Telegram. And since that time, he's pursued leads on Bigfoot sightings, and in 1999 founded the Texas Bigfoot Research Center. Where?
Well, it's in Jefferson, Texas.
He's appeared or contributed to many TV shows and documentaries. It's all yours.
All right, well, thank you, sir. I'm going to be talking about the Lake Worth Monster and a little bit of my history with Bigfoot. But before I get started, I want to give a shout out to one of the, I've been doing this here in Texas since '99, but one of the forefathers of Bigfoot research here in Texas, he's here in the audience, I'd like to come up for just a second and give him a little recognition. Ed Owens, right here. He was, there was back in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a group called the Dallas Bigfoot Society, and based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and followed up on reports, Paris, Texas, I'm guessing now by Lake Tawakoni.
I agree most for that time, mostly in north, maybe southeast Oklahoma,
Okay.
northwest Arkansas, that area.
Right, but he was the sketch artist for this group, and so he would, people that had sightings, they would describe it to him, and he would do a sketch for the society. And the founders of it kind of crumbled a little when they moved to Oregon in the early '80s, but they were doing it way before they were researching Bigfoot, before researching Bigfoot was cool, way before finding Bigfoot or anything that I did, because I didn't get started until '99. But I just want to give a shout out to Ed Owens here for getting it started way back when. Well, my history with the Lake Worth Monster is that I was a kid in 1969 when the Lake Worth Monster was on the front page of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. My grandparents lived in Fort Worth, long-time residents of Fort Worth, had a cabin cruiser out at the marina at Eagle Mountain Lake, so we spent a lot of time out here on the other side of the dam. But when I was a kid, I was always afraid that the Lake Worth Monster was going to come visiting over to Eagle Mountain Lake, and we were going to see him over there. But it never happened. But these are the front page articles from July 10th and July 11th, 1969. We're talking less than 10 days away from us landing on the moon. The front page news was about the Lake Worth Monster. He was commonly called the Lake Worth Monster, also called the Goat Man, Scaly Fish Man. There was lots of descriptions of him, but he was basically described as about 7 foot tall, 300 pounds, covered with white fur. Some people saw horns and scales. My personal opinion is he was known to eat fish. He actually supposedly stole fish from fishermen here, and I'm guessing that if he was eating raw fish, sushi back in the day, that the scales would have stuck to his hair, fur, mouth, face if he was eating raw fish. So I don't think he personally was scaly, a fish scaly man, goat, or whatever, or a goat, but that's just what people described him as. As I said, half man, half goat, covered with fur and scales. He leapt from a tree and landed on a car. There was this area, well, I'll get to it a little bit, but there were people that were out here in the area. Before it was the Fort Worth Nature Center, it was just Lake Worth and Greer Island, and kids came out here and hung out and what kids do when they go out to the lake and parking and probably drinking a little beer, making out a little bit. But one night something jumped on a couple's car and left an 18-inch long scratch on the side, and thought that they was reaching inside to try and grab the girl that was in the car, and so they sped off and notified police what had happened. This was the next day that was in the article, but the pit, you can go down and see the pit. It's just across if you drive down and actually go to Greer Island, which you ought to do just to see, you can actually walk out onto Greer Island now because it's connected to the mainland with a land bridge, but back in the day, it used to actually be an island. But that was said to be his hangout where he would go to get away from the people here in the park that were hunting him. But he actually stood up on that pit. You can go out there and you can see the pit, can't you, Tanya? You can even stand up on the pit, edge of the pit,
Throw a tire too.
and throw a tire. But he supposedly, you know, had this car tire and threw it from the top of the pit, you know, out here where the people were. And so the picture of that ended up in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on July 11th, 1969. These were the headlines that were being in the newspaper about, you know, what was being seen. Lockworth monster, monster bobcat, you know, there were tons of people. And the Lake Worth monster is generally thought of as the most witnessed local creature. That summer of '69, it was seen by hundreds and hundreds of people that were out here at the lake, including law enforcement personnel. There were policemen that were out here when these things happened and saw stuff. So it was seen by a lot of people, not just like a random Bigfoot sighting, you know, in Pacific Northwest or something. He, at least that summer, was hanging out in this area and seen by hundreds of people. Now this is a map from 1939 of the area here, and as you can see, Greer Island is an island there. It's not connected as it is today to the mainland where you can walk across and out to Greer Island. It was actually an island out there. So he was seen at night after people would see him actually swimming out to the island. And this again is a map of the area where a lot of the sightings were, and you can see Greer Island is actually an island when this photograph was taken. This is a map where sightings are marked on the map where the monster was seen. You can see these X's on here. These are X's where there were sightings and they were marked on this map. And as you can see on here, Greer Island now, you know, you can see where it's connected to the mainland here. And the pit where he threw the tires in this area. So, you know, if you take a drive from where we're at and go down to the south end of here, you can park. There's like a cul-de-sac down here where you can park, and you can get out and walk to Greer Island. You can walk down here and see where the edge of that pit is that he was seen running back and forth that night in 1969, where he threw the tire out at the people and they were out there watching. And once again, this is kind of the deal. It was kind of a lover's lane area where the kids would come and congregate, and where the goat man or the Lake Worth monster was seen, sometimes peering into their cars and being seen down there in that area. These are just some of the other incidents. This drawing right here was actually drawn by Bobby Brooks, who has a table down with some of his original Bigfoot artwork there at the festival. But he drew this picture, he drew the drawing that's on the actual copy of the Lake Worth Monster book that Sally Ann Clark authored. I have a couple of those books. She passed away, unfortunately, 1 month to the day after the inaugural Monster Bash we did here back in 2009. On October 4th, she passed away on November 4th. I was not able to attend the festival, but I still have some of her books, and the family does, I guess, have some of the books, but they're generally not in circulation, and they're pretty hard to find. They're going on Amazon. I saw one listed for $100 on there. I got one when it first came out for $2 when I was 9 years old. But as you can see, there's other things that have been seen. Creature in the grass fields, breaking a limb. There were shots fired at the creature and a pool of blood with tracks leading to the edge of the lake when supposedly he was shot at, hit, and swam off to Muir Island back in 1969. To this day, there are reports every now and then of a creature that fits the description here that are seen in the area. I know the last one that we investigated with my organization, the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, was in 2008. It was very nearby here to the park, where somebody saw a large hairy creature. This is the infamous photograph that was made by Alan Plaster. He owned a dress shop here in Fort Worth, and on November 19th, '69, he was driving around on Shoreline Drive and supposedly saw this pop up out of the grass, and he took a photograph of it. This photo is heavily cropped. The original photo is, the subject is much smaller in the middle of the photo, but it was at 1:35 in the morning, and he, to this nowadays, doesn't contact it, doesn't want to have anything to do with it. As a matter of fact, he gave the original photo to Sally Ann Clark back in the day, and it's in her estate with all her belongings that are left over from all of her Lake Worth monster stuff. When I first met her in '99, went to her house, she pulled out 2 suitcases full of photographs, drawings, letters, newspaper clippings, and we went through all that stuff. But she does, in her estate, does own the actual photograph. This is the cover of the book, and this is also was drawn by Bobby Brooks, who, like I said, is here. That's his initials right there on the book. Like I said, I've got a couple of copies. They're very, very, very hard to find. I've actually got a couple of this is a postcard, a drawing he made that Sally produced on a postcard, this drawing here. And I do have a couple of copies of those as well at my table there in the festival area. But this is the drawing that he drew. He said he drew about 5 drawings of witness descriptions. And this is the one that she used for the book that he wouldn't have chosen, because it does depict like scaly and the horns. But he would have rather used the other drawing on the book himself. And she claimed to have actually had 4 sightings herself, because after she wrote her book, I mean, she rushed the book out. The book actually came out in August of '69, only 30 days after the rash of sightings, and she wrote all about that. Her book is partly fictional, partly fact, talking to eyewitnesses, but she fictionalized some stories in there. But it's a cool book. But she claimed to have 4 sightings of the creature after the book was written, and her last alleged encounter was in August 1977. This is Sally Ann Clark in 1976 with veteran Bigfoot researcher John Green. He traveled Canada and the U.S. from '76 to '78, collecting stories, talking to witnesses, and this is also a drawing of the Lake Worth monster that Bobby Brooks drew that was over 7 foot tall, that she has in her belongings. At the first festival we did out here in '09, it was on display out here. But this is John Green, who wrote this book, and the account of the Lake Worth monster is in this book, Sasquatch the Apes Among Us, and this is Sally Ann Clark with him at her house. Many theories as to what the monster was. One of the stories I really remember is this one right here, the bobcat. If anybody is around my age, they may have used to watch on Sunday morning. What show was it that had Davy and Goliath, and Helmut Naumer, I think is how you pronounce his name. He worked with the Museum of Natural History here in Fort Worth, and his explanation for it was that it was a bobcat that jumped out of a tree on the car. But as you can see, there was many other. I mean, there's lots of teenagers from school that claimed they were out here with their buddies in a gorilla suit or whatever, even throwing a gorilla suit at the cars or wearing the gorilla suit, jumping out at cars as they drive by. But at that time, before it was the Fort Worth Nature Center, there was there's a lot of guys toting rifles and shotguns out here, convinced that they were gonna shoot the monster. So, as a matter of fact, I think one boy was actually shot out here at the lake because he was in a costume, and from what I remember the story, he was mentally impaired, but in a costume out here, you know, acting like a monster in the weeds and such, and actually was shot, not just injured, not fatally or anything. And as you can see, there's other cases in this area of outside of 1969 and outside of just here, what is now the Nature Center, where there were other hairy creatures that were seen. You know, Red Oak, Grapevine Lake, Decatur, north of Lake Worth near Ash Creek. And like I said, we got a couple of reports, and the last one in 2008 that we investigated with the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, where there was something that was seen out in this area. And like I said, it's pretty popular. It's known as the local creature that was seen by the most people, the Lake Worth monster. Like I said, there were hundreds of people that saw it that summer of '69, because once word got out, there were hundreds of people that came here to see it, to shoot it, to capture it, you know, whatever, and many of them did see it. But it lives on, you know, with the Monster Bash here. I helped Michelle in 2009. We organized the 40th anniversary. Yes, sir?
About 5 minutes.
Okay. We organized the initial one in 2009, which was the 40th anniversary. And then we did it again in 10 and 11, and then decided to do it every 5 years on the 5th anniversary. So on the 45th, we did one in 2014, and now's the 50th anniversary here in 2019. But it's you know, again, featured on television shows, Monsters and Mysteries in America, in different cryptozoology books, the internet, television shows, newspaper articles, and you know, every time it's an anniversary of the sightings, it usually shows up. The Dallas Morning News, Channel 8, the Star Telegram feature stories about the anniversary of the sightings of the creature. And the mystery lives on. This is just a nice photo there in Lake Worth and Greer Island. That's actually the pit there where you can go today, but the creature was seen to run back and forth across the lip of the pit here and scream and yell at people, and like I said, and then threw a tire off into here that night in '69 when there was hundreds of people out there. So that's the end of the presentation. If anybody has any questions, like I said, this was very influential to me because when I was 9 years old is when this happened, and it propelled me in a path of, you know, not being an outdoorsman, not being a hunter, but being a Boy Scout when I was a kid, but seeing something in 1994 in Louisiana, walking no more than 20 feet from the side of the road, a large 7 foot tall, covered with hair. You know, it was actually walking. It wasn't a burned out tree stump. It wasn't a bear, and propelled me into trying to find answers into what I saw and what other people are seeing. And I've talked to hundreds of people that say they've seen one of these things. And, you know, there's only a couple of different instances that I can say that what happened to them. Either they're lying, made it up, and just making up a story, which I've talked to people that are doing that. You know, they may have been hoaxed by someone else, unbeknownst to them. You know, they could have been under the influence of alcohol or drugs or something and been hallucinating. They may have witnessed, you know, just misidentified known wildlife or a person. Or the last instance, you know, they may have seen what they say they saw. And if even one person is telling the truth about what they saw, then there's something out there. And then if I even throw out everything that anybody's ever told me, I still have my own experience that I can't explain away, that I saw something 7 foot tall, covered with hair, walking, not stationary, it was actually walking parallel to the road. We saw it taking steps, my girlfriend and I. And I wanted to stop and she did not, so we didn't. So I don't know what it was, but I know a whole lot of what it wasn't.
Is your story written somewhere?
It's actually on the Wood-Ape, the North American Wood-Ape Conservancy website. I have it in my notes on Facebook, but on their website, it's on there
And that
for,
sign was for,
it's in the wrong county, parish, because it's in a parish, but for many, many years, I didn't know exactly where it happened. And I thought I put the picture of my sighting, but I went back in 2014 to film an episode of Finding Bigfoot, and Bobo and I went out to the scene where it happened and pinned it down, but the original parish that I thought it was, Rapides Parish, it's not, it's a nearby parish, but it was very near the small town of Bunkie, Louisiana, which is on Highway 71 between Shreveport and Texarkana, and this is on the below Shreveport, between Shreveport and, say, Baton Rouge. Near about 35 miles southeast of Alexandria is where it happened, but Bunkie. And
I'm trying to go there.
we did a camp out this past May where we went there to the site where it happened. But there was a history of sightings and stuff found there, in that area. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, losing my voice. Is there I'm have a particular interest in some sightings in Ellis County in the 1930s. Is there a particular reference I can go to?
You can go look on either the BFRO's website, but a lot of their Texas reports came from our organization, or on, it's actually woodape.org, and look up county by county in Texas. Now, the closest I investigated, pardon me, I did investigate a report that took place near Midlothian, so not very far away from there. But a lot of them in southern Johnson County, following the, now I'm drawing a blank on the river that flows into Lake Whitney.
Brazos?
Brazos, the Brazos from up north, along the Brazos down through Johnson County, that area, but,
My mother had some, she's 88, and still quite with it. She tells stories about being a child and I guess it'd be along the Trinity River in it.
Okay.
East of Ennis, sound sighting stories.
well, there was a lot of them along Chambers Creek. There was one of the localized monsters called the Chambers Creek Monster, which flows, into Richland Chambers. But it goes west to east, around Italy and through that area before emptying into Richland Chambers. But there were a lot of sightings there along Richland Chambers. Yes, sir?
Yeah, you mentioned on the other locations like the one in 1938 in Red Oak, and I was writing those down. What was the one after 1955 in Denton?
Let's see. I'll pull that slide up for you right there.
1982 near Lakeland. Were all those, or most of those like a white ape? How detailed were those? Or?
Well, as you can see, one of them was just a footprint, but the others were huge white-haired figures, the first 38 and 55. And that may be something, that's Red Oaks, that's not very far away from Ennis area, just a little north of there.
Well, there's a story about sometime in the late 30s, the guy supposedly shot, they saw two of them, shot and killed one, and the other one was very angry and chased them all.
Oh, really?
That's about the same time my mother was having.
Yeah, you see that's Hunter's 38 there in Red Oak area.
Yeah. I started to kill one and buried it,
Really?
and we were trying to find where they buried it.
Oh, yeah, if you could find that burial spot, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir.
And I guess I'm out of time. Thank you, folks.